Hello, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about subject-verb agreement rule number 4. Before we do that, though, let's review the first 3 rules that we have learned so far. Our first rule is our basic one. A verb should agree in number with its subject. A singular subject must have a singular verb. A plural subject must have a plural verb. That's our basic rule that applies in most situations. Our second rule focused on prepositional phrases. We know that the subject of a sentence is never going to be inside a prepositional phrase. A prepositional phrase is extra information, so a subject can't be inside of it. To agree the subject and the verb, ignore any prepositional phrases in the sentence. Rule number 3, focused on compound subjects. When you have a compound subject and it's connected by or nor, you have to look at the subject that is closer to the verb to determine if your verb is going to be singular or plural. For all of these rules, you need to make sure that when you are agreeing your subjects and verbs that you don't worry about what sounds right and worry about implementing the rule, and then you're always going to be correct. So all 3 of these rules focus on sentences that are traditionally constructed. We know that in a normal sentence, we have a subject, and then after the subject comes the verb and the predicate and the object at the end. But what we're looking at today for rule number 4 is a totally different situation. Our rule number 4 states that in inverted sentences, the subject of the sentence comes after the verb. So rule number 4 deals with sentences that are not traditionally constructed. And so you have to read them very carefully to make sure that you find the correct subject so that you know what correct verb to pair with that subject. So let's look at some examples so that you understand what this rule is trying to state. Okay, so in a traditional sentence, we're going to have this construction. 4 horses live in that barn. Our subject comes first. Our subject is horses. And so we know that if horses is plural, we need a plural verb, and live is the plural verb in this situation. So we have the subject first, and then we have the verb second. But our rule is not about traditional sentences. It's about sentences that are inverted. So let's take a look at what that looks like. An inverted sentence is going to have the subject at the end. And we don't see this a lot. We don't hear it spoken very often, but we will see it in some writing. So here's how that traditional sentence from our previous example could be inverted. In that barn live 4 horses. We have to be careful with this sentence. Our subject is still horses, but this sentence has been inverted. It's been arranged in a backwards order from what we're used to. So we have to make sure that we find the correct subject and the correct verb to go with it. We also have to be careful to keep using our rule number 2 about prepositional phrases. In that barn is a prepositional phrase. So hopefully you can recognize that and ignore it. Our subject in this inverted sentence is horses, and the correct verb is live. So this is what a basic inverted sentence might look like. All right, so that's the first example you might see. We have 2 more examples of inverted sentences that you might encounter. Our second example are questions. Questions are always inverted sentences. The subject is always going to be after the verb, usually towards the end of the sentence. Like this sentence right here, where is the bus driver? Our subject is not where. Where is an adverb. Our subject has to be a noun that is or a pronoun that is the focus of the sentence. So in this situation, our subject is actually driver. This this is inverted because it's a question, so the subject comes at the end. So our subject's driver, and our verb has to be is. Driver is singular. We need the singular verb, which is. So questions are the second type of inverted sentence you might see. And our third example. Sentences that begin with here and there. Here and there are also adverbs. We know a subject has to be a noun or a pronoun. So there can't be our subject. It's not a noun or a pronoun. These are examples of inverted sentences. Your subject is going to be after the verb. It's going to be after here and there. It's going to be after the verb that follows them. It's going to be a noun or a pronoun that is the focus of the sentence. So in this situation, we have to ignore a couple things. We have to ignore the word there. It's an adverb, we ignore it. We also need to make sure we're still using rule number 2, and we ignore the prepositional phrase on the lake. The subject of this sentence is really the word fisherman. Fisherman is plural, and so we have to use the plural verb are to make it fit. This is difficult because a lot of times we say this incorrectly. We might say, there's many fishermen on the lake. There is many fishermen. That's not correct though. Fishermen is plural, so we have to have a plural verb. We can't use theirs or there is. That's incorrect. We have to use are. All right, so there are 3 examples of how a sentence can be inverted, but you need to make sure you pay attention to the rule. In inverted sentences, the subject of the sentence comes after the verb. So you need to look after the verb to find your correct subject, because you have to find your correct subject in order to find the correct verb that matches it. Thank you for listening to my presentation.